The gentle Arizona morning, still cool before the summer furnace ignited, washed over the two-story house on its quiet, tree-lined street. Sunlight painted the kitchen in warm gold, where Rachel Wilson packed lunches to the sound of her son's eager voice. "Mom, I'm going to the library after school, for new dinosaur books." Rachel turned, her smile automatic. Tommy stood in the doorway, his small frame squared with purpose, his eyes, the same bright blue as his father's, wide behind his glasses. Even after 7 years, the ghost of Michael in that smile could still catch in her throat, but it was that very smile that had pulled her through. "Straight home after, okay? I promise. Can I get 2 books? Only after your homework is done," she said, tapping his nose. He nodded, his expression turning solemn. His careful, gentle nature was so unlike the boisterous boys on the street, and it never failed to make her heart swell with a pride she knew Michael would have shared. The house around them was a living archive of their lives. On the kitchen counter stood a small herd of plastic dinosaurs, the mighty T-Rex, a silent sentinel, Michael's last Christmas gift to his son. On the living room wall, a photograph of her mother, Martha, stared sternly from her days in a nursing uniform, her white coat impeccably crisp. Beside it hung her sister Catherine's accountant certification, a testament to a promise now faded. Catherine had returned home 7 months pregnant after her divorce, carrying another man's child and a trunk full of designer clothes. The weekend brunches had become a tense, silent war. "Rachel, you're always working. We could help more with Tommy," Martha would say, her mouth a downturned line, even as Rachel's paychecks covered 80% of the $2,000 mortgage. Rachel would sip her tea and say nothing. Since Catherine's return, the air in the house had thickened with her mother's unspoken comparisons. "That man was no good," Martha would declare of Catherine's ex-husband, as if the failure of the marriage belonged to him alone. But Rachel knew the truth was buried in credit card statements and shopping bags. The campaign for Tommy's room had begun subtly. "You know, this room gets the most beautiful light. It would make a perfect nursery," Catherine had mused one afternoon, draped in the doorway of Tommy's room in a silk maternity dress, her expensive handbag dangling. She barely looked pregnant. She surveyed the space like a curator evaluating a new gallery acquisition. "Why don't we have a garage sale? This house has too much clutter," Martha had suggested, her tone casual. Catherine's eyes had lit up. "What a wonderful idea, Mom. I don't need any of this old stuff." A cold dread had settled in Rachel's stomach. But a major real estate contract, a luxury development in North Phoenix that could define her career, demanded all her focus. When the deal closed, her bonus finally in hand, Rachel planned a 3-day trip to Disneyland. It was a sanctuary, a chance to build new, joyful memories with her son, to fortify him against the void his father had left. "Make some good memories," Catherine had trilled. "Yes, have a lovely time," Martha had echoed. Their voices had been cloyingly sweet, their eagerness for their departure a palpable, unsettling force. The night before they left, Rachel had paused at Tommy's door. The room had seemed tidier, emptier. She'd chalked it up to pre-trip exhaustion. Now, bathed in the dusty, rose-gold light of a Phoenix twilight, their taxi turned onto their street. The dry wind rattled the car windows. "I can't wait to see my dinosaurs. I'm going to put the new Stegosaurus right next to Dad's T-Rex," Tommy chattered from the back seat, cradling the plastic figure he'd bought. Rachel smiled, her heart full from 3 days of his unburdened joy. "Yes, but we unpack first." "I know. I'll clean my room before I set it up." But as the house came into view, her smile faltered. An unfamiliar station wagon was parked out front. On the porch sat a gleaming, high-end stroller. "Is Aunt Catherine having a visitor?" Tommy asked. Rachel's throat tightened. An instinctual alarm, cold and sharp, spread through her chest. The front door opened to a profound, unnatural silence. The house was never this quiet. The background hum of life, the television, Catherine's gossip, Martha's movements, was gone, replaced by a vacuum. "Mom, it smells weird in here." Tommy was right. The familiar scent of their home had been erased, replaced by the acrid tang of fresh paint and the powdery perfume of new baby products. Her heart hammering against her ribs, Rachel climbed the stairs. The setting sun bled through the hallway window. casting a lurid, red glow. "Mom, I want to see my T-Rex," Tommy urged, his small hand tugging at hers. She could feel a faint tremor in his grip. Her hand closed around the cool brass of his doorknob, and in that moment, she knew with a chilling certainty that something was irrevocably broken. The door swung open. Gone was the universe of a little boy. In its place was a pristine, pastel pink nursery. A state-of-the-art crib stood where his bed had been. A changing table was stocked with luxury lotions and powders. The shelves, once crammed with fossils and plastic reptiles, now hosted a regiment of brand-new, tagged stuffed animals. Every trace of Tommy was gone. "Where's Dad's dinosaur?" Tommy's voice was a thin, trembling wire. A smooth voice cut through the shock. "Oh, you're back early." Catherine stood behind them, a vision in cashmere and smug satisfaction. Martha hovered just behind her, wearing a mask of uneasy defiance. "Where are my son's things?" Rachel's voice was deceptively calm, a sheet of ice over a raging sea. "I cleared it out, sold it all. Actually, got a decent price, too," Catherine declared, as if announcing a promotion. "Your sister is pregnant. It's only natural she needs the space," Martha added with a thin, nervous laugh, as if stating a simple, universal fact. "But what about the dinosaur Dad gave me?" Tommy cried, tears now streaming down his face. It was his last present. "Oh, that old thing?" Catherine waved a dismissive hand. "I sold it to the second-hand shop. It would have clashed with the new decor anyway." A violent shudder ran through Tommy's small body as he clung to Rachel's leg. The tremors felt like seismic shocks. "Don't be sad, Tommy. Look, I'll give you this new teddy bear. Isn't he cuter?" Catherine reached for a plush bear on the shelf. Rachel's voice cracked out, sharp and frigid. "Don't touch him." Her hands trembled, but her purpose was solid as she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. This is theft." Catherine's laugh was a brittle, ugly sound. "Don't be so dramatic. Calling the police on your own family? How could you do this to family?" Martha whispered, her face a mess of confusion and reproach. "This ends now." The words were quiet, final. Holding her sobbing son tight, Rachel turned her back on them and walked slowly down the hall. Their laughter, high, sharp, and tinged with a cruel delight, followed them like a curse. In the taxi, Tommy wept into her coat. "Mom, what are we going to do? Dad's dinosaur?" "I promise you," Rachel whispered into his hair, her voice steel wrapped in velvet. "I promise we will get it back." This was no longer a family squabble. It was a declaration of war. A young officer approached with a tablet. "We've also checked social media, ma'am." Catherine's Instagram feed glowed on the screen. There, proudly displayed, were Tommy's belongings, labeled as unwanted junk. Among them, clear as day, was the T-Rex. The estimated value of the stolen property is approximately $20,000, Detective Morrison stated, sliding a document across the desk. The dinosaur collection alone contained several premium items. Rachel nodded, the number meaningless. The true cost was the shattered trust, the desecrated memory. Her next stop was a law firm in a downtown high-rise, its marble halls echoing with the sound of resolved footsteps. Attorney James Foster, a man whose calm demeanor seemed unshakable, laid out the evidence. The premeditation is clear. From her social media history, she was planning this for at least a month. "They waited for your vacation, a deliberate and malicious act." He spread more documents before her. "We also have neighbor testimonies. Witnesses heard your sister stating she had priority because of her pregnancy." The economic counterstroke began at the bank. With all the documentation in hand, Rachel initiated the process to stop payment on the family mortgage. The paper trail of her financial support was now a weapon. Back in Foster's office, he presented her with a final document. "This is the draft of the certified letter. It outlines the civil suit for theft and emotional distress, and formally notifies them of the mortgage payment cessation." Rachel took the paper. It felt heavy, final. It was no longer just about a room, or even a dinosaur. It was about drawing a line in the sand and defending the sacred ground of her son's heart. The battle for their home had truly begun. The wail of sirens cut through the quiet suburban evening, casting flashing red and blue lights against the familiar facade of the house. From behind twitching curtains, the neighbors watched as 3 police cars disgorged their officers. How could you? Martha's cry was raw, theatrical, as she stood in the doorway. Calling the police on your own flesh and blood. Aren't we family? Rachel stood silent, a statue in the chaotic light. The pleas designed to guilt her for years now fell on deaf ears. Rachel, think. Martha tried again, her voice cracking. You'd have your pregnant sister arrested? But there was no more room for negotiation. This was not an act of spite. It was the cold, necessary machinery of justice engaging to protect her son. Later, in the sterile quiet of a hotel room, Rachel watched Tommy sleep, his face finally peaceful. She gently stroked his cheek. Tomorrow, the battle would move to a new arena, the stark formality of a courtroom. It was a daunting prospect, but a necessary one. I'll get his keepsake back, she whispered into the stillness, her voice a vow. I promise. The heavy bronze doors of the Maricopa County Courthouse gleamed under the already brutal Phoenix sun. Cicadas buzzed in the oleander bushes, a buzzing soundtrack to the day of reckoning. In a cool, quiet cafe across the plaza, Rachel sat with attorney James Foster, her fingers tracing the condensation on her iced coffee glass. Foster exuded a calm, formidable confidence. The evidence is overwhelming, he stated, laying out the documents like a general deploying his troops. But this is the cornerstone. He slid a printed sheet toward her. It was a record of direct messages from Catherine's social media, dated 3 months prior. Catherine, can you buy everything from my nephew's room? High price. I want to dispose of it quickly because we're moving. A complete fabrication, Foster said flatly. There were never any plans to move. This is premeditated theft, planned well in advance. He then presented the financial records, a damning timeline of Martha's draining accounts to support Catherine's lifestyle, juxtaposed with 7 years of Rachel's consistent mortgage payments. Your mother was using your financial support to underwrite Catherine's theft, Foster summarized, his tone leaving no room for doubt. As they left, Rachel's phone rang. It was Detective Morrison. We have a development. The detective's voice was crisp with satisfaction. A raid on the second-hand dealer's warehouse recovered several of Tommy's belongings. The dinosaur figures are among them. A weight of impossible magnitude lifted from Rachel's chest. There was still a chance. The courtroom was a theater of solemn power, all dark wood and symbolic flags. Reporters packed the benches, having latched onto the compelling drama of a sister suing a sister. Catherine entered, a portrait of a grieved maternity in her expensive clothes, with a haggard Martha trailing behind. They did not look at Rachel. The evidence unfolded with methodical precision on the screen, the security footage, the brazen social media posts, the bank records, and the damning messages. The defendant didn't just seize an opportunity, the prosecutor told the jury. She orchestrated a campaign, one that callously targeted the most sacred memory of a fatherless child. When Catherine's lawyer tried to plead pregnancy-related stress, the argument withered under the cold, hard light of 3-month-old messages. We call Tommy Wilson to the stand. Seated in the witness box, Tommy looked small but his voice was clear. The dinosaur my dad gave me, before he went to heaven, it was my most important treasure. The courtroom hung on his every word. Aunt Catherine and Grandma, they took everything, even my memories of Dad. Throughout his testimony, Catherine maintained a smirk of contempt, an expression that did not go unnoticed by the jurors. In a hallway confrontation during a recess, Rachel finally asked the quiet, burning question, why? Why? Catherine sneered, her hand resting on her belly. You always had to be the perfect one, didn't you? The successful sister, the ideal mother. Your jealousy led you to break a child's heart. Jealousy? This isn't about you. I'm building a new life. Once my child is born, what I want will be mine. Later, on the stand, Martha unraveled. I only wanted to help my daughter, she wept. But you knew you were selling your grandson's most cherished possessions, didn't you? The prosecutor pressed. Martha could only look down, her silence more eloquent than any confession. Detective Morrison presented the final, financial blow. The defendant liquidated the stolen items for a total of $23,450. The jury's deliberation felt like an eternity, but it took only 2 hours. We, the jury, Find in favor of the plaintiff, the foreman announced. We award damages of $30,000. Furthermore, the defendant is hereby issued a permanent restraining order, prohibiting any contact with the plaintiff or her son. Rachel stood, her legs steady. She looked at her mother and sister, the two women who had chosen to be her adversaries. This is where our family ends, she said, her voice quiet but carrying to the very back of the room. As they exited, Detective Morrison approached, a genuine smile on her face. Mrs. Wilson, we'll have the dinosaur figures released to you tomorrow. Tommy's joyous gasp was the only verdict that truly mattered. Rachel held him close, looking out at the Phoenix sky, a vast, untroubled blue. 6 months later, morning sun streamed into their new home. The view was different, but the peace was profound. Mom, look, the dinosaur room is all done, Tommy called from upstairs. In his new room, the recovered figures stood proudly on a custom shelf. Michael's T-Rex held the center, a returned king. New books and Tommy's own drawings covered the walls and desk. It was a room rebuilt, a sanctuary restored. Through therapy, Tommy's nightmares had faded, replaced by the easy confidence of a boy making new friends. I aced my math test, he'd announce, his smile once again reaching his eyes. Their old house, its mortgage defaulted after Rachel stopped payments, stood vacant, a monument to betrayal. Martha and Catherine had been forced into a cramped trailer on the city's dusty outskirts. Over lunch with colleagues, the gossip eventually turned to them. Have you heard? Jennifer murmured. After the baby came, Catherine sank into a deep postpartum depression. Martha's struggling to care for the infant alone. Karma, another colleague said with a satisfied nod. Rachel simply stirred her coffee. She'd heard the rumors of Catherine's continued luxury spending, a sad pantomime of a life that had collapsed under the weight of its own greed. That evening on their small patio, Tommy nestled beside her. Mom, are Grandma and Aunt Catherine okay? Rachel chose honesty. They're facing the consequences of their choices. Honey, their lives are difficult now. They aren't happy like we are. Oh, he was quiet for a moment, then leaned into her. Well, we have what's important. Yes, Rachel said, holding him tight under the emerging stars. We do. A year later, life in the trailer park was a slow, grinding struggle for Catherine and Martha. Catherine's designer clothes grew frayed, her online presence a ghost town. Her child learned a mother's love from a weary grandmother. Meanwhile, Rachel's home was filled with the sounds of weekend barbecues and laughing friends. It was a home built not on obligation, but on choice and mutual respect. Mom? Tommy asked one night before bed. We're really happy, aren't we? Yes, my love, Rachel whispered, tucking him in. We really are. The dinosaurs on his shelf stood silent guard in the moonlight. They were more than toys. They were proof of a promise kept, a bond defended, and a justice, hard-won and deserved. The night sky from their window was always clear, a testament to the unshakable happiness they had built together. Piece by carefully reclaimed piece.